let's talk about something important in your trip to Colombia that you mightn't have thought much about. Hi all, I'm Isrado and you're watching my travel channel where I talk all things Colombia. In my last video, I talked a bit about what cinemas are like in Colombia, which you can check out here or in the description. And now that I've got that crucial topic out of the way, I thought I'd tackle something admittedly not as important, but you know, maybe something I should mention anyway, and that is what supermarkets are like in Colombia. So without wasting any time here, let's get into it. Colombia has a handful of major supermarket chains. The main ones that spring to mind are Éxito, Carulla, Jumbo, Ara, and Olímpica. I'll start by going over these chains, and then I'll talk a bit about what to expect from Colombian supermarkets in general. Now, as you might guess, all of these chains have some key differences to one another regarding things like their prices, the types of goods they sell, their amount of stock, and how prevalent they are. So I thought it would be useful to describe these differences to you. That way, whatever the reason you're out shopping, you'll know which store suits your needs. So let's start with one of the most widespread supermarkets on this list, Éxito, which literally means success in Spanish. Really not tempering your expectations here. Now, one of the biggest aces Éxito has up its sleeve is, as said, its availability. You'll find this store in pretty much every city of Colombia, and it also has the biggest range of stock. In fact, it's quite common for Éxito to double as a department store where they'll sometimes have another floor dedicated to non-supermarket items like electronics, clothes, kids' toys, and all of your typical department store mainstays. In this sense, you could think of Éxito as the Colombian equivalent of Walmart, albeit on a smaller scale. In terms of pricing, Éxito is pretty standard, nothing really overpriced or underpriced outside of discounts, so no surprises here. Another thing worth noting about Éxito is that they have an online marketplace in addition to their brick and mortar stores. This is by no means unique to Colombian supermarkets, but one thing that does stand out from most of the other stores on this list is that they also sell things that aren't available in their physical stores. In fact, many of these things actually come from third-party retailers, with Éxito just acting as the middleman between them and you. For instance, this TV here is sold by Megatronics, but is being sold via Éxito's website. So this sort of works like a national eBay or Amazon, where third-party sellers can list their goods on Éxito's site for greater publicity, although unlike those sites, only verified retailers can do this, not just any individual. Now, although the prices in Éxito's physical stores are pretty standard, buying via third-party retailers on Éxito's website can be a great way to save money. Moving on to the next supermarket on this list though, let's talk about Carulla. This would have to be the most expensive supermarket in Colombia, and this is very much reflected in how it presents. When you'll visit, you'll notice it's particularly clean and ordered, a little more spacious than some other supermarkets, and there's a real emphasis on fresh and gourmet food. If you're from Australia like me, this is a bit like Woolworths in terms of its quality. Beyond presentation and marketing though, a lot of the standard products sold here are things you'll also find at Éxito. Obviously, I'm just talking about groceries here though, not department store items, as unlike Éxito, Carulla is exclusively a supermarket. Now, although it has a reputation for being the more upmarket, expensive supermarket, the price hike is kinda negligible. Most of the time, the price difference between products here and at Éxito is less than 50 cents, so unless you're doing a full-on $50 plus grocery shop, you're probably not gonna notice much difference. Really, the main difference outside of appearance that you'll notice between these stores is that Carulla tends to have a larger range of imported products. I wouldn't say it's anything to write home about, especially if you're from a more multicultural country like the US or Australia, where you're probably used to having access to a plethora of international goods. But by Colombian standards, this is probably the most multicultural supermarket chain you'll come across. In terms of its prevalence, Carulla isn't as ubiquitous as Éxito. Most of Colombia's most popular cities will have at least one, oftentimes more if it's a larger city, but otherwise this is definitely a smaller chain. Next up we have Jumbo. Similar to Éxito, this is another supermarket slash department store hybrid, albeit not as widespread across the country. It's a little more common than Carulla, but Éxito still reigns supreme on this. Now, to be completely honest, other than its lower prevalence, there's not a whole lot that sets Jumbo apart from Éxito, although I have found Jumbo's products to be marginally more expensive. Again, not enough to likely affect you in any meaningful way unless you're doing a big grocery shop, but it's worth noting nonetheless. Another difference I found is that on Jumbo's online store, despite still having a larger range, they don't seem to list products from third-party retailers. Now, I could be wrong on that, but unlike Éxito, there isn't any mention of third-party retailers on their product pages. Another possibility is that the product brands themselves have created the listings and are just using Jumbo as a host site, again, much like Amazon, but it's not entirely clear. Haven't got much else to say about Jumbo. Again, it's pretty much just a slightly less widespread Éxito, so moving on. The next store I wanted to look at is Ara. This one's quite different to all of the other supermarkets I've mentioned so far, in that the stores themselves are very small. This is not the place to go to if you're looking for a very specific uncommon item, but if you're looking for something more common and mundane, like, I don't know, toilet paper, cleaning products, fruit and veg, bread, and a few select snacks, this might suffice for you. It goes without saying that this is solely a supermarket, not a department store, and even then it's more of a smaller corner store like mini market. The biggest advantage Ara has over every other supermarket on this list though is its prevalence. You'll find this store everywhere, more than even Éxito. I'm pretty sure Ara exists in every city of Colombia, and there'll often be a ton of them spread around different neighborhoods. As such, you may often find yourself in a situation where you want to get something from the supermarket and you could go to Éxito or another larger store, but there happens to be an Ara much closer to you, and so you're constantly playing this game of, will Ara sell the thing I'm looking for? Because again, it's like a mini market with less range. As said though, for the most basic essentials, you'll be fine here. It's just probably not the sort of place you'd want to go for a full grocery shop, or if you want somewhere with a lot of choice. Regarding prices, Ara is definitely on the cheaper side, and that's not an indictment on their products, just to say that they often sell things cheaper than elsewhere. Alright, the final supermarket I wanted to go over today is Olímpica. Like Éxito and Jumbo, Olímpica doubles as a department store as well as a supermarket. It's unclear whether they provide listings for third-party retailers on their website like Éxito does. They do have a section on each listing that says who it's sold by, but on every listing I could find it always seems to say sold by Olímpica, so if they do have third-party retailers, it's clearly not to the extent of Éxito. One market difference between Olímpica and all of the other stores on this list though is that they also operate as a drugstore. Now yes, most of these other stores sell over-the-counter drugs as part of their product range, but Olímpica also has certain stores that are exclusively drugstores, which also sell prescription medication. In terms of prominence, I'd say it's about as widespread as Éxito, although the product range, whilst fairly extensive, isn't quite as large, at least as far as the department store items go. As for pricing, their regular prices tend to be lower than those at most of the other supermarkets on this list, at least for their supermarket items. However, they don't tend to discount things as much as, say, Éxito, and for that reason, the price you'll end up paying can work out to be similar. Still, this is a cheaper supermarket on the whole, so if you shop here regularly, you'll probably be saving in the long run. So I just wanted to interject real quick, as I actually forgot two other supermarkets you'll find across Colombia that are fairly common. One of them's called Colsubsidio. So this one's fairly similar to Olímpica in that, you know, it sort of has the same product range, is about the same size and about as widespread across Colombia. Sometimes it's just a supermarket, sometimes it's a supermarket and department store, and other times it's often a standalone drugstore slash pharmacy. And then the other store I wanted to mention is D1, which is very similar to Ara in that it's very small and also very widespread across the country, and the prices are also pretty low as well. Anyway, those were just two extra stores, both very common. I forgot to include them in the original script, hence why I'm doing this, but yeah, back to the video. Okay, so now that I've described all of the most popular supermarkets in Colombia, let's talk a bit about some of the distinct qualities of Colombian supermarkets in general. So probably the most pressing question you have is, do they sell everything I want? And to that, I'd say it really depends on what you're looking for. As far as produce goes, you'll probably be fine. Obviously, there are some things that aren't grown in Colombia as much, but there are also things that are grown here that you wouldn't find at home, so it kind of evens out. Same goes for cleaning products, beauty products, and medication. I never found any noticeable difference in range. Again, they might not have all of the brands you have back at home, but then there are a bunch of Colombian and Latin American brands in their place, so you still have a good amount of choice for those things. For me, the one area where I noticed there was a bit of a difference between supermarkets here and in my home country of Australia was in the range of snacks. Now, this isn't the case for everything, like in terms of the amount of cold aisle snacks like yogurts and ice cream and the like, that wasn't too different, nor were the amounts of sweets and chocolate. Where I did notice a substantial difference, however, was the choice of biscuits. As far as sweet biscuits go, it's pretty much just mini cookies, Oreos, and a very small amount of other things. Then for savoury biscuits, the range is even lower, honestly really bordering on non-existent. In fact, if you just want to buy some savoury snacks in general, really the main choices you have are between a few plain crackers, nuts and chips. I suppose they do have a few regional snacks like archiras, but there certainly isn't enough of this to bring up the range in any significant way. Personally, this low range of snacks is the biggest thing I've missed about supermarkets back in Australia. Like being able to get savoury biscuits that skim the line between healthy and unhealthy, like shapes for instance, is something that's a lot trickier here. The closest thing you'll find are just individual chip packets, of which there are a lot, but you know, at that point I feel like I'm just straight up eating junk food. Same goes for sweet biscuits. Like at home I can have some tiny teddies or whatever and not feel too guilty, but here it's like Oreos, cookies or bust. I suppose if you're someone who's just trying to cut snacks out of your diet completely, this could be a pro because you have less temptation, but overall I think it's more pro-consumer to give the customer more choice. Outside of that qualm though, I haven't run into too many other problems. Admittedly, I eat out a lot here because of how affordable it is, so I'm not exactly buying a bunch of ingredients all the time to cook stuff. When I have done this though, I will say that there are certain products that you may take for granted at home that aren't as prominent here, particularly when it comes to international ingredients from say Asian countries or European countries. They certainly don't have as much choice here. It's not to say that they supply Latin American brands exclusively, like there's still a bunch of imported products, particularly from large brands like Barilla. Just don't expect the range of international products you have in most Western countries though. One thing that Colombia does have a leg up on, however, is their coffee, as you might imagine. In terms of range, you'll often have a choice between coffee that's being grown in various departments across the country, each with their own distinct flavour and strength, so there's a lot to try here. I'm not a coffee drinker myself, but I can imagine if you are, you'll have the time of your life with all the gourmet choices here. The country's most famous coffee brand, Juan Valdez, has very high acclaim and can be found in most supermarkets everywhere, along with several boutique brands such as Café Quindio. A couple more supermarket differences that particularly stood out to me though. Firstly, when it comes to Kellogg cereal, the branding and in some cases even the names of the cereal differs to the Australian counterparts. For example, instead of Frosties or Frosted Flakes as you call them in the US, here they are called Zucaritas. There were a few others too, like Rice Bubbles being called Rice Krispies or Cocoa Pops being called Choco Krispies, but I eventually found out that those latter names are also what you call them in the US, and in reality Australia and the UK are the odd ones out with that naming, so that was a bit of a surprise. I don't know if you realise, but in Australia, because we don't have these naming conventions, it's never occurred to most of us that Cocoa Pops are literally just chocolate flavoured Rice Bubbles, so yeah, that was a bit of a mind blow moment to me. One last thing I'll mention is something I've never seen in supermarkets back at home, and that is the inclusion of a seating area for dining. Although most supermarkets don't have this, you do sometimes see it at Éxito especially, where there'll be a few plastic chairs and tables set up, often near an in-house bakery. It's not like people go out of their way to come to the supermarket to dine like they would at a restaurant, but it's an appreciated addition. Anyway, that's about everything I have to say about Colombian supermarkets for now. I hope you learnt something, but if you have any questions about anything I missed, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to help. Also, if you have any suggestions for a future video topic, you're welcome to leave them in the comments and I'll definitely consider them. Until next time though, like, subscribe, bell, and I'll see you around. Ciao!